Hello and welcome to the July edition of Comments from the Capitol. I'm State Representative Ed Brooks. Earlier this month, the budget was signed into law by Governor Walker. The budget passed out of the Senate on a 18-15 margin, and it passed the Assembly on a 52-46 margin. I was one of those that voted in the negative, and I'll explain my reasons for that a little later in this video. But first, let's get to the questions. Sarah and Nasita asked in an earlier edition of Capitol Comments, you spoke of many items that you wish to see removed from the budget. Were you successful in removing any of them? Well, thank you for the question, Sarah, and yes, we were able to remove many things that we had concerns about. Let's begin with the DNR and the DATCAP boards. The governor had proposed that they would become advisory boards. That portion of their duties were removed. They remain as they have been in the past, a policy setting board. Countywide assessment was another major issue that we had fought together and were able to delete. So your local assessors will continue to do your property assessment for your local income or local property taxes. K-12 funding had some cuts, but ultimately we were able to restore $70 million in the second year as well as keep the funding flat in the first year. Additionally, senior care was quite important to our residents, and we were able to maintain that. Senior care is a prescription drug program for the seniors in our state, and it is a very advantageous program for them to be in. Family care, IRIS, ADRC, they all were removed in the earlier version, but they were added back as the Joint Finance Committee went through their work. And so those were good additions. We heard a lot from people at different hearings around the state saying that these were programs they wanted unchanged. And so, again, this is one of the positive things, they were reinstated. One of the things that was important to myself and the constituents that I serve is that the Wisconsin Fund, which is a grant program to help people with failing septic systems in the rural areas. That was slated to be removed and unfunded. The Joint Finance Committee reinstated that along with funding it for both the first and the second year. So indeed, some things did turn out better in the budget than what we started out with. Our second question comes from Matt in Boston, who says, I was disgusted at the changes to the open records law that were put in the budget at the last minute. Did you have anything to do with that? If so, and why? Well, Matt, I understand your frustration. First of all, those changes were removed from the budget as quickly as they were put in. So they were not in the final budget that was passed and signed by the governor. I didn't have a vote on that, like a majority of the things that come along in the 999 end of the budget motion. We didn't know ahead of time what they would amount to, but certainly that was one that was probably universally felt to be unacceptable. It was removed, and therefore it's no longer an issue. I thank you for your interest in that, and I likewise am glad that is out. And our final question comes from Josh and Elroy. Why did you go against your party and vote no on the budget? Well, thanks for the question, Josh. Despite the things that I mentioned earlier that were positive in the budget, there were some things that caused me great concern and ultimately my decision to vote against the budget. One of the sticking points was the transportation budget. I think universally all legislators agree that the level of funding in the initial proposal was too high. I do agree with the amount of reduction that Joint Finance made. However, I also wish that they would have been able to put some revenue increases in, whether it be a modification to the gas tax if we were to go back to the indexing that we had, I think, 6 or 8 years ago, where the gas tax would adjust as inflation. Therefore, it's not any big jolt in any particular. That would have cost probably our ratepayers probably 5 cents a gallon at this point. Another source of additional revenue would have been to increase the registration fees on our vehicles. Currently, we are below our neighboring states, and this would generate a sizable amount of revenue so that we could keep our highway projects on time and on schedule and risk kicking the ball further down the road. Additionally, there's one other area that caused me a fair amount of concern and also gave me the reasons to vote no on the budget, and that was the lifting of the caps on statewide voucher program. In my rural district, I find a lot of opposition to the expansion of the vouchers, and I understand why. There is a place for vouchers, perhaps in a urban center where there are failing schools and there are no other choices for families to send their children. But in the rural district, particularly the 50th that I represent and hopefully you're a resident of, there are no failing schools, and therefore parents have a large number of options currently, whether they be using the conventional open enrollment or whether they do homeschooling or go to a charter school. So I just felt that by expanding statewide, that was more than what was appropriate at this particular time. That's about all we have for now. I thank you for tuning in this month. And again, I'm Ed Brooks. We'll see you next month. Thank you.